It was supposed to be a night of fun, a dare, a thrill, something to break the monotony of their small town. But for a group of 4 friends, what started as an adventure turned into a nightmare they would never forget. The old amusement park had been abandoned for over a decade. Once a bustling place filled with laughter and lights, it now stood as a crumbling relic of the past. The gates were chained shut, the rides rusted and still, and the only sound was the wind whistling through the empty corridors. But for Jake, Mia, Ryan, and Emma, it was the perfect spot for a late-night adventure. They arrived just after midnight, parking their car a few blocks away to avoid drawing attention. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the park as they climbed over the broken fence. The air was thick with the smell of decay and something else, something metallic like rust or blood. At first, it was fun. They laughed as they explored the empty ticket booths, the cracked mirrors in the fun house, and the overgrown pathways. But as they ventured deeper into the park, the atmosphere began to shift. The laughter died down, replaced by an uneasy silence. It felt like the park was alive, watching them. "Did you hear that?" Mia whispered, stopping in her tracks. The others froze. In the distance, they heard it, a faint melodic tune. It was coming from the carousel. "That's impossible," Ryan said, his voice trembling. "The power's been off for years." But the music grew louder, a haunting melody that seemed to echo through the empty park. Against their better judgment, they followed the sound. The carousel was lit by a single, flickering bulb, its horses creaking as they moved slowly, as if ridden by invisible passengers. "This isn't funny," Emma said, her voice shaking. "Who's doing this?" As they stood there, the music suddenly stopped. The carousel ground to a halt, and the light went out, plunging them into darkness. That's when they heard it, a low, guttural growl coming from the shadows. "We need to leave. Now," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. But as they turned to run, the park seemed to come alive. The Ferris wheel began to turn, its rusty gears screeching. The swings swayed on their own, and the funhouse mirrors reflected figures that weren't theirs. And then, they saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the carousel, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They ran, their footsteps echoing through the empty park. But no matter how fast they ran, the figures seemed to follow, always just out of sight. They finally reached the fence, scrambling over it and collapsing onto the sidewalk. When they looked back, the park was silent and still, as if nothing had happened. The next day, they reported what they saw to the police, but no one believed them. The park was searched, but there was no sign of anyone or anything inside. The friends never spoke of that night again, but they all had the same recurring dream: the carousel, the music, and the shadowy figure, watching them from the darkness. Years later, the park was demolished, but some say the music still plays on quiet nights, and the shadowy figure still waits for its next visitors.